Awesome, man. We're recording, bro. I'm so stoked about this one. I said this to you before, like, I think the way that I've kind of gone about the first three is kind of being more that sort of, I've got some questions. And although I do have a little bit, I kind of am just keen to just do what we've been doing offline, which is having a chat. But before we get there, I just want to say, so in week one, I looked at trauma. Week one, purpose, then it was trauma, then keto. And today it's all about booze. It is booze. The founder of 101 Tokens, I know we met in May last year, or before May last year. We did that little mid-strength May thing together. And then since then, I've just been watching what you've been doing, man. And from from the conversation we just had before, I'm super, super pumped. One of the things I want to say is that, like, at the moment, there's so much content, right? So much content, and two areas that we share. We're both in the startup scene, and there's similar things that we're talking about already offline, which hopefully we can bring in, and then booze. How can we, for your audience, for the 101 audience, and then for the people who connect with some of my work, how do we give them value? What can they get at the end of this where it's like, okay, cool, that was worth my time?
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for having me on your show, first of all.
I think I need to warm up a little bit.
Yeah, that's all right. That's totally fine, mate. That's sweet. That's what people come here for, is to have the conversation, listen to the conversations. Interestingly, Nate, one of my favorite copywriter new friends, some people call him one of the best copywriters in the world, invited his email list the other day to hear him talk to a guy who's an expert in webinar design, right? And so I found it fascinating because, and this has changed my perception on everything, right? When you listen to a podcast, you're looking to try to learn something and stuff. But for me, when I'm listening to a podcast, it's like my opportunity to sit there in a cafe and overhear like a banging conversation without me feeling like I need to, like, especially for those ambiverts closer to the introvert sort of vibe. Sometimes you just don't want to jump in. But what my mate did the other day is he literally had this conversation because he was getting his webinar triaged. So he's about to go on the webinar circuit. Apparently it's a thing in the States. I think it's probably big in Australia, but I'm not really aware of it. Essentially, you just go and you partner with aligned people. You go out to their list. They make an affiliate cut. It's like you deliver a webinar, you add value to their list, and everyone wins essentially. Wow. So yeah, he's looking at how he can level up his webinars. But the format he took was, hey guys, I'm just having a conversation with this dude, Liam, I think his name was, and it's for me. This is for me. I'm going to ask him questions. He's going to give me advice. He's triaging my current webinar. But I just thought I'd invite you guys in, and just so you know, this is for me. But I'll allow you guys to ask some questions at some point.
Yeah.
But I just thought, what a brilliant. Because how many times are we having conversations during a day? Like the amount of conversations that me and you have had, who have like been shooting value at each other and like talking about shop and the fucking hardships and everything.
Right.
When you go, that could have actually been really epic for my community to just listen to. Yes. Because even if they're not into business or whatever, even if they don't drink, and to answer your question, I think the important thing is that they go away with like new ways of approaching conversations. Defining how to ask better questions when in situations like this, or just simply getting to hang out and listen to two people chat about cool shit.
Yeah, I love it, man. I think the last time, with the exception of that quick chat we had before, I think the last time we chatted was when I was in San Fran. I can't remember where you were, and I called you, and I had to ask you for advice. I remember I was walking, I was on the way to Colorado after that for my first trip to Colorado, and I was all pumped, and we were talking about different business models and what it needed to look like, etc. Do you remember what I asked you? Because I remember I was just walking the streets. I was just like, Benny, I need to, and you gave me some advice about it, but a year in our world has gone. Like, think about where we both were a year ago, and then what's going on now, and the shifts and changes, etc., which occur in this journey of going, okay, what we're building and how we see it. How does then the market see it, and then how do we deliver something? And particularly based on our skills and where we're coming from. Like, we didn't do MBAs. Either of us didn't do MBAs. It's all self-learning. And I think the big thing that both of us have and both of us share is that we lose a lot of money we've got a very expensive hobby, which gives you a lot of pain. Like, that's the way I can look at startup life in some ways. It takes your time. It takes your money away from your key and your core business, which is producing for you. There's sacrifices across every area, and it's something that is just, it's in your mind the whole time, and you're trying to problem solve. How do you define it, man? How, from your experiences, do you even see it? Like, is it startup life? Like, what do you think?
Oh man, that's such a big question. I mean, like, fuck. When does it stop being a startup? Like, when did Facebook stop being a startup? That's always, I guess, the question, because you know, and well, so my experience initially was working in a seed funded startup, 5 people, punching above our weight. Essentially had like a couple of contracts on the line, which would have made or break us. But then the founders, one of the co-founders sued us. So that broke the business because we were raising Series A. So when you're raising money and you get sued by a co-founder, and I won't go into that long story, but it fucks everything. Anyway, so that's my vision of a startup. And then the next startup I worked for was Series A, raising Series B, and like expanding.
So sorry, man.
You know. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But some of those people out there are like Series A, Series B.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Cool. Not business conversation. Yeah. I know, it's bullshit. It's all fucking bullshit. But anyway, seed round is usually you. If you're raising money, which we haven't yet, so we would be called pre-seed. But why are you pre-seed? Maybe you don't want to raise money.
Exactly. Like, the strategy.
We should all be trying to be like, really, we should. Well, it depends on your industry, right? Some people can't scale unless they have money. But yeah, I think with brands like Patagonia, I'm pretty sure they've never raised money, and they're a true unicorn in my mind. And a unicorn is $1 billion plus company, right? So yeah, so Series A would be the next time you raise money, and there might be some more definitions around that in Series B and C and D, whatever the hell it goes on. But it's basically like seed, then series. And yeah, so the second company I worked for was rapidly scaling, like huge. And so the startup, had like 100 and something plus people with 3 to 4 different offices around the world, and that's still a startup. And it's I guess, yeah, I don't know, like, cause I've been so into on building this myself. I've been like, I've done a few pitches to go into things where you can acquire money. I have got one investor, which is my mum. So that's kind of, I'm like, and actually one of my goals in my business, is to help my mum retire early, is actually one of my goals. So it's it's a pretty big one, but I want to do it as if like she's going to make the return on the investment that she's made in the business. So she's actually a legitimate investor, or legally she is, essentially. So yeah, I don't know, man. Startups, like, I think it's kind of a whatever term to me. But I think what we're doing at the moment is trying to follow our passion. And when people say, "Oh, that's a pretty good job you've got," I'm always like, "Nah, it's not a job. It doesn't feel like a job to me. A job is where I've worked for someone else and I've been stressed. Not that I'm not stressed, but like where I've felt like, I don't know, this weird other power of someone telling me what to do all the time. And it was never, apart from maybe the first startup where I had quite a bit of say, it's always been, you do this and you work these hours and the client is always right, and fuck them, they're not always right. And so like I think, that's kind of, I don't know if I answered your question, but I don't even feel like I'm doing a startup, even though that would be the term. Yeah.
I tell you what, like before we were having this conversation, I was like, I'd love to have a beer throughout this conversation. And I told you before like when we had that little chat, my mind was kind of been going back and forward, because I'm trying to do this little thing at the moment where I'm like, okay, no booze for a month, and which in the past would have been an absolute breeze for me. But now I've integrated alcohol back in as a social component, and I drink a few days a week, but they're like, it could be I have one beer. So if we're looking at tokens, I'm using a token. So when we're talking about tokens, obviously that's your business, which you founded, which is 101 tokens. And correct me if I'm wrong, the idea is that out of the 365 days, 366 in a leap year, you have 101 tokens, and that token is used when you drink. regardless if it's one drink or if it's 40 drinks. It's a token. That's the premise of it. And then there's the learning and the scaling of the night, which then helps to provide awareness for that drinker about how alcohol is going to play a place in their life. Is that right? Or I know you're going to be able to do it better. How would you say this?
Mate, that's probably one of the best explanations anyone's ever got. I've got people who are in my community who can't explain it that well.
Okay.
Anyway, but the only thing that I would tweak is that you're 100% correct. It's just that we don't, 101 was my challenge because I was drinking 5 nights a week. So if I had that amount of tokens, it'd be 250 something tokens, right? So that was my challenge. Now people have their own agency to select how many tokens that they'll be proud of. And they don't do a whole year. Like some people do still do a whole year, but people will do, especially when I'm working with businesses and corporates, that's only an 8-week period or a 12-week period because, you know, I don't know what their churn is of staff anyway. So they're not going to put their staff through 12 months. So,
okay. And that's an indication.
Yeah, some people, I drink every night and I'm going to do more.
Sorry, man. That's an indication of where we were. So like what I was saying before, the year ago that's where you were. And then what you've done is gone, okay, I need to bring this into a new market. Or I need to see a new opportunity. I need to fit it into how it can be and put it into a time frame which people are like, wow, I can connect to that. As an example, it's like, hey, I'm doing a month off. Like this is something that people do quite regularly, I think. And there's an awareness, particularly for people I think that are going to be listening to this and in both our worlds where people want to be better. People want to live better, longer. That's kind of like that why of mine and what I'm trying to achieve from a number of different hats that I wear and that I'm trying to pursue. And I can see what you've done is respond, right? And changed it from 101 and throughout the year, and you've changed it into how it is now. Yeah,
well, it was never intended to be a business to start out with, so that's probably why that was up thinking. You know, this would be like there's points that there's part of me that I shy away from the 30-day challenge thing because I think abstinence challenges are bullshit when they don't have the right systems put in place for people to integrate back into. If you turn the tap off on something, what happens when you turn it back on, right?
Okay, this is cool.
That you either go.
I love this. I had a question.
There's statistics. Yeah, that's all right. I don't have the stats. I just want to get something just quickly.
Yep, all good, man. Oh, the man! Here we are. Damn, I'd love one of those.
We could have had a beer, but they're not even in the fridge.
I'd love one of those. They're great drink.
You got me onto them,
mate.
You got me onto them. That's why I get them.
Full flavour, beautiful flavour. You can have 2 or 3 in their mid-strength. Mate, if they had that over here, I wouldn't have to have a month, try to put discipline on myself for a month because they're amazing. They're amazing. One question, man. I'm interested to hear. Why is it different when we're having the chat now that we know we're like filming and recording rather than before? Like, I think there was a little pause before. I was like when we were just having the yarn before, it was a different vibe, right? And it's like, okay, let's just try to make this a chat and let's just try to go for it. But just by going, hey, I'm now recording, it's kind of like, all right, it's changed. Hey, man, how you doing?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think the only difference with how I try and articulate my words a little bit better when I know people are recording.
Yes, yeah. I did.
It's probably that is the shift. Yeah, it's kind of like sometimes I don't make a lot of sense. What was the question? Sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I just wanted to get them out because it was such a good prop.
Oh, I love it. The question, which you went into, I got asked. So few people noted I was going to be speaking to you and what the subject matter was about. And I had a question actually come in, which was cool. And it was, what's better, cold turkey, as in I'm just going to get off it, or to go with something else, to go with a different way of approaching alcohol and try to look at, can I do this socially, etc. I think I know where you're going to go, but I want to put it over to you because what you said before was amazing. There's no point fucking going cold turkey if there's no purpose and no why that's associated with it, right?
Yeah, totally. So like when I'll do a triage calls, which is just basically me like trying to find out about the person because I do private coaching as well, 8 to 12 weeks usually in blocks. And so I literally half the time I send people to different places because they either need like more, down the side of kind of psychologist help with this stuff before they come to me, or we can work alongside. Like, I'm happy to do that, even though my program has been created with a psychologist as well in mind. Or he vetted it. So it's different for everyone. Like, there's some people, right, that it's only a small percentage of the population that can see Arnold Schwarzenegger training like a mad dog, and then the next day they can stop eating shit, start eating whatever he eats, get the proteins, get the, do the weights, and then all of a sudden, within a year or two, they're a bodybuilder or whatever. That's a very good example, but that's only a small percentage of the population. Then you've got, I guess, like, people need that self-reflection. I've got a psychologist friend, she says self-reflection's a muscle. I'm like, it totally is. It needs to be trained all the time. So you're not really, you make through a point, and every year during Dry July, it's pertinent now because it's just gone through, you get the Guardian journalist or the fucking Sydney Morning Herald pisshead journalist who's just decided that, like, oh my God, this is the first time I've had 30 days off, and they'll write the article before they even get to fucking August. And you're like, hang on, write this article midway through August or something and tell us like the true transition. Like, I don't want to hear from you. Everyone's a hero in Dry July, right? Where the real heroes like come about are those people who have had an issue with alcohol where it's been detrimental to themselves and the people around them, and they've had a month off.
How would you say that's detrimental? So I've got areas that I look at. I want to know, when does it become problematic? What does that look like for you? What's that scale? Because I think this is a question which is very important. There's a lot of people out there that drink booze, and I would say drink booze problematically. And it's not only the young people and young adults, it's older people with the presumption in mind that, oh, I can have a glass of wine, but that glass of wine is a bottle of wine that they have at nighttime. Like, that's rife, man. What is detrimental drinking? And how does that look? So people are able to kind of go, maybe this is a bit close to home, turn off, but maybe they come back to it to go, well, I just want to see if I fit into that. So what sort of scale would you look at there? Or how would you determine what could be a problematic drinker?
So for me to determine it, that's where I need to have the conversation. But having said, you can't really, that's the problem with the current sort of health system and definition of what binge drinking is and what problem drinking is because doctors have to say, how many units are you having per male or female? I don't even know if they really go into weights and stuff, which they need to, right? Because it's the amount of water that your body holds that's why big fellas can drink a lot more beer typically than a skinny one like us. So, I've been seeing your rig though, mate. You've been pumping a bit of iron.
Look at him glow. Look at him glow. Stop it. No, I'm trying, man. I'm trying to put on some weight. It's been a long time, yeah.
Yeah, so everyone has a different scale because some people can have 2 wines and then they're sick as a dog the next day.
Sure.
Another 12 wines and not 12. Maybe, I don't know. But okay. So it's a sliding scale. But the metric that I use is people need to go through that process of actual self-reflection, which isn't during the time they're drinking. It has to be the next day. On my app, you can't say until the next day rolls over. And they have to sit in it. They have to sit in the feeling. And they have to go, is this me showing up my best? And there's, I guess, 2 parts to that. We all want to show up our best as much as possible. But what I talk about as well is you can have a Sunday every now and then where you maybe drank, I don't think anyone should ever drink to excess beyond their limit. But people should be able to have the agency to drink up to their limit, provided that they're okay with how they feel the next day. And that could be being okay with how they feel, even though they're hungover. Yeah.
Man, I love that. I love it. I've just underlined it, and I'm gonna use it. I'm sorry, I'm gonna use it though, but I'll send some references your way. But is this me showing up my best? That's amazing. That's amazing because we know that's a good scale. Like, I don't think it's about am I hungover or not. Like, I think we need to get away from that, and we need to look at what is the impact of use. Now, this is something that I look at in weed, right? So cannabis is very it's a fascination of mine for where it was And I think it mirrors prohibition. Like we're living throughout prohibition, right? And there's a number of different things about cannabis, though. Sorry to take it off. But the thing is that while we can look at it for the application of it, where there's people who use it for pain, people use it for cancer, people use it as CBD for general health and well-being, there's all these components which are associated with it. And it's like, this can support you. This is helpful to, like, we've got an inbuilt cannabinoid system. Like, it only gets activated when we have cannabis. If we're looking at optimal health, it's kind of like, well, we need to look at why our body and the intelligences we have would have something that's inbuilt, but we're not meant to consume it, right? So how do we utilize this in a safe way so that then we can get our body into a state of equilibrium? How can we reduce inflammation to, as you're just saying, to show up and be our best, right? But what does misuse look like? And in terms of having the conversation, I'm not sure if there's parallels with alcohol, but I'm mindful, particularly in my role, I work with people who have problems and they misuse cannabis. And I'm not someone who's going, smoke it up, buddy. I'm not at all. My whole focus is getting them off that, because the way they use it is harmful. And it's harmful because it spills into three key areas. It spills into their primary responsibility. Now, if their primary responsibility is work, study, treatment, getting off drugs, or it's chemo, if it's whatever it is, or you maybe you're caring, like you've got a child, or you've got a daughter or a son who's got a disability or a mental illness and you're still caring for them. Whatever that primary responsibility is of yours, if it spills into that, it's a problem. If it spills into key relationships, i.e. with your intimate ones, your loved ones, your children, your mates, your family, your workplace, it's a problem. And if it spills into the sense of self, i.e. I'm not showing up my best, it's a fucking problem, right? But in terms of having that conversation about cannabis, I'm mindful that there's a lot of stories out there where there's actually been harm associated with the use of cannabis, like there would be for alcohol, right? So then in having a conversation, it's like, well, I need to understand that there still is a strong belief out there about the use of that, and that is because how it's used. So let's get education in. Let's get someone, ideally like me, what you're doing in the alcohol space, and I'm planning, and I am doing already in the cannabis space, to then look at, okay, how do we use this to get the best out of it? Like, there's no better drug than alcohol. There simply isn't a better drug than alcohol. It makes us feel great. It is the best social lubricant there is. It's amazing if used right. Like those Rogers you pulled out before. Sorry, I'm on a bit of a rant, aren't I? But those Rogers,
right. No, mate. This is good.
Those Rogers you pulled out before.
I'm the king of rants.
If we kind of smash, if you have 2 of those, there's no problem, or even 3 of those. There's no problem with it. It's just, that would be an amazing. I think it would optimize health, like social health. Going out and having a booze, it optimizes it. Take it over to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, alcohol is the best, well, potentially the best and worst drug that we have, because you're talking about like the elements, like the scale, right?
So it's use and misuse, like cannabis, right?
You read how to? Yeah, totally. Yeah, have you read How to Change Your Mind? By Michael Pollan?
Yes. Oh no, I have. Sorry, different book.
Okay, yeah, that's
yes.
Yeah. So that his talk about psychedelics through the 60s and 70s and how that became like public enemy #1.
Yeah.
That's fucking awesome. That's your case in point there, where, you know, the media will take on the perception that they want when they see it as a threat.
Well, it's coming. We know, you and I know it's coming.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that know it's coming. You know, society's not ready for that discussion yet, I don't think. We're just kind of grappling with cannabis, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We're grappling with cannabis, and we've got to wrestle cannabis out of our system before this thing comes along, and it's coming 100%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it all. We can just look to the States and, you know, Canada and stuff and see what's going on there to kind of see how it's coming in. But it's, yeah, I think I don't actually, honestly, don't think we'll be drinking alcohol in 15 years, maybe even shorter. Yeah, I feel like it's going to be a dying drug. Yeah, a dying substance, because, well, it definitely won't be. We won't be drinking it in the same way. So in terms of technological advancements, I think the majority of us who drink,
is that all
we really want to do is hack. Sorry?
All of us, you think? Across
No. I just don't think it'll. I just think will look a lot different. I just think the way that we're changing up chemicals, the way that we're 3D printing things, and the way there's a doctor in the States, in the UK called Dr. Nutt, who's trying to take acetylhalide, I can't even pronounce it properly, out of alcohol, which is the compound that makes us sick and gives us the hangovers. So he's also trying to create an antidote drug that will in his thoughts is to drink alcohol, then or park your car at the pub, drink the alcohol, take the pill, bang, drive home, because he reckons he can figure out a way to get it out of your system in a way that'll bring you back to coherence. So I think there's going to be there's going to be so many shifts. I think by the time that comes in, we'll have self-driving cars that we don't drive our own cars anyway most of the time. But anyway, so I think the space is going to change massively. But and why I always talk about vice optimization, which is kind of what you're talking about with cannabis, is how do we use it in a way that is conducive to a peak performance state. And so, tapping into that endocannabinoid system and making all the good things happen, like you said, in inflammation. So how's the technology feeding into that to make sure that we have real-time biometric feedback about this is the right amounts that I need for my body right now. And within alcohol, I think that's going to become way more apparent. Well, once it gets FDA approved in the States, is Fitbit's giving you direct feedback on your blood alcohol level through alcohol seeping through your skin. And so when that shit, because at the moment you could carry around a little breathalyzer and I've got a little breathalyzer from this company called BAC Track. It's about this big. I should grab it. But anyway, you can breathalyze yourself and go, no, don't drive home. Or no, don't have that tequila. But at the moment, people don't want to do that. It takes too much thinking, especially after you've had a few drinks. So once our apps and this technology can feed back to us a lot quicker, man, the game changes. And for an alcohol company, or if you're dispensing CBD or I'm not really well versed in that space, but it's there's still opportunities to continue to sell the products, and then hopefully the products will get healthier. But for the most part, using alcohol as an example, people went to the pub and they just stayed tipsy the whole time. Imagine the change, if we could just stay tipsy. That's what everyone's chasing, tipsy, and then they end up drunk and stupid, fighting and killing each other in some instances. So it's going to be an interesting space to watch.
Yeah. It's interesting you slant on alcohol, and it's interesting how I was it's the best drug, and you're it's the best drug, but it's the worst drug, because there is that spotlight, the harm that alcohol causes, the statistics about A&E, ED, whatever country you're in, about emergency rooms, the numbers of how alcohol contributes to those numbers is significant. I know that from working in government in the past, looking at something like domestic violence, family violence, right? The role that alcohol plays in that, and then the devastating impact that has on women, on children, and some men as well. And then I dare say, so we're looking at the family, but then the community, the impact alcohol has in terms of decision-making, in terms of men or women both being and not able to manage and communicate their needs, and then using alcohol. And you remember those images, that advert from when we were young, and people were sitting around a table drinking alcohol, and they used to turn into these different characters, and there used to be the snake that would come on. Yep. Do you remember that? That's some amazing. I'd like to be Joe Rogan now and be let's pull that up. But obviously I'm not.
Oh, we can.
Just YouTube it, and then we can screen share.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That was pretty powerful, man. Pretty powerful and awesome. It was really cool.
I remember when I was in advertising, it was really, I remember this is we had the government as one of our clients, and they had made all these anti-drug posters, advertisements, right? And they had them all laid out, and they basically got the younger crew, who's the target demographic of the agency. I was 23 or something. And they were like, what do you see when you see these ads? And they had disgusting meth labs, and, they had I remember one, it was really gross, pills inside a condom on the ground. And it was they were real gross, disgusting. And And I just was like, this doesn't affect me because it's not what I see. And I know you're trying to like crank up the narrative on what's, where this stuff's coming from. But for me, I was just like, and everyone was kind of like, yeah, it's kind of, I guess it makes you think for a second, but you guys should come at it from, and this is where I think we can come at it from, is a point of understanding, like, why are people taking those drugs in the first place? And why are they taking that risk? And especially with some of those ones which are the stuff that's being used in the States for like trauma. MDMA is like the number one anti-trauma treatment now. It's like, there's a whole nother conversation. And I mean, that was 10 years ago. So I don't know what they're doing now. I've seen many anti-drug things, but I assume it's probably in the same vein. Yeah, because that's kind of our jam. We like to dive in on, where's that person at in their life and why are they consuming them? And a lot of the time, but probably the majority, it's just social connection, right? Usually enhanced social connection. Yeah. So,
hey, who's the ideal user? Who's the ideal user of 101 tokens? And then who's the client? Who's your client, Benny? What does that client look like? And if someone's listening to this, what would they then be kind of nodding their head to and go, I might just go look at Benny's details on his Instagram or look at him on LinkedIn and give him a call to explore more? What would be some of those things that someone out there listening at this stage, and if you're still listening, thank you very much. But what would it be for them to be nodding their head and to get them from the position of nodding to taking action, whether that's looking you up, reaching out to you? What would that look like?
My ideal client is someone who's honest. Usually someone who reaches out to me has come to a point where they need to be honest. I always say, like, people change a habit. This isn't mine. I don't know I actually got it from a friend who almost had to get a liver transplant. But yeah, she was telling a story. She goes, you only change a habit if you get brushed by a feather, you get smashed by a brick, or you get hit by a bus. And in the instance of being hit by a bus, you're dead. So you fucked it, right? Many of us have those stories where we almost got hit by a bus, but we got hit by an almighty brick. It's usually the bricks where people reach out. And that goes for companies who've had to fire like high-end fucking sales executives that are turning over millions, and they've had to just fire them on the spot for doing something a little bit dumb on the booze. But in terms of individuals, the reason I started 101 tokens was a feather, and it was just like it brought back a lot of the bricks that I'd been hit with in the past. And at the same time, it was like, usually it's a pivotal moment where it's like, okay, now I've got to step up. So my ideal client is someone who knows what they've got to step up into, and they're motivated. And I prefer to work with entrepreneurs because they're persistent. And I prefer to work with people who are like go-getters. Like C-level executives are good because they're kind of in that same vein, and they got the money too, because my private coaching is not cheap for everyone. But the other thing is that they have to be willing to want to spend money on themselves. So someone who's never invested into themselves, a gym membership, whatever. But like you and me, we know you have to put money into yourself to get the best out of it. I've spent well beyond my means in the last year through business coaching, personal development coaching. I spent almost 20 grand with the Flow Genome Project to train up with those guys. And that's because I want to work with people like me and you, like other people who are like willing to put money where their mouth is, because those people who just do free courses and loaders or whatever, not my jam. Having said that, my app you can download for free. Anyone can have a crack at it. But yeah, if I'm going to work personally with someone, I really like them to have some form of influence, because we've only got a short amount of time here to get people to start thinking about conscious consumption. So if I'm going to work with you for 3 months, I ideally want you to be the kind of person who goes, fuck yeah, I'm going to tell my friends and family about this. Fuck yeah, I'm going to implement this into my business.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Awesome,
so that's kind of...
I think you can see
quite a few things. But
man, I can see how you've utilized expert support to bring the best out of you in. So the best of you shines. There's snippets of this already. You just made that. You were able to paint a picture for me about feather, brick, and truck, and I was just like, I get it. I get it. I get it because in some ways I attach my circumstances to it. You know, what occurred for me in my life, I would say it's it's the brick or the truck. I'm not sure. Maybe it's the truck, but I got out of the car.
You've dodged a few buses and trucks in your life, haven't you, mate?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I got a comment that came to me, but I connected with it, man. And I imagine people who else are listening to this connect with it. You've got a way of kind of putting it into something which I can attach to. And the other thing that you said before, which is absolute gold, and I'm going to cut this up and put it online, is when you were talking about who's showing up, because most people, and I love some of the work from Brene Brown, she was struggling in her book. She talks about it. She was struggling with the concept of do people really give it their best? And she was wrestling with this, or she would like to call rumbling with it. She was rumbling with this idea, and she gets to these findings in the book, and you may be familiar with it by the nod you're giving, but it's like, yeah, people in their circumstances generally are doing their best, right? Mm-hmm. But for someone like you, I think, like I make the comparison, and someone's listening, they're going to say that I've done it again, but I make the comparison about us being iPhones, right? So we're the 10XR or whatever we were, right? And that's where we are because we released an inferior version of us, or we were an inferior version, and that was the best we could be there, but we got upgrades. Our software got better. We had better features and we had better functions. I see you in this conversation that we're having right now, and from knowing from where you were and what level you were already at during that first conversation where we just clicked and it was like, awesome, I got a new pal here. I can see that investment. I can see the ROI. I can see the return on investment for you and how you're presenting yourself. Like, I'm thinking, geez, you're convincing. Geez, it's coming across really compelling. So just to give you some feedback, man, I think you're doing fucking amazing.
Thanks, mate. Yeah. And I think I like really appreciate compliments. I probably couldn't take them very well probably a year ago. But I think it's a good thing to get good compliments, especially from people you respect. And I think we're on a very, very similar journey together. And that's why it's so sick to always try and find people who are in your boat and because you can bring each other up when the tide rises, right? The saying, that's what Finding the Frothers is all about. And yeah, just a little tip. This is always something I say in all my workshops is like, do you know who the people are that you want to associate with, and have you written it down? And also, do you know who the people are that you would love to associate with? And if you do, but you've never written it down and you've never fucking told anyone and you never told them, how towards that? So it's a really simple thing to start doing is just to go, well, who am I hanging out with now? Make sure I hang out with them because they give me the froth, right? They give me the energy and they're helping me get to the next level. Who's in that next level? I should be hanging out with, usually not as hard to attain. And then who's at the level of, fuck yeah, that's like we were chatting offline before. The guy who lives, 10 minutes away, he's a fucking legend and he's already offered to help me a bunch. He's where I want my business to be in 2 to 3. So how do I, be gracious and accept his assistance, and then what does that evolve into? And I think answering my own question, don't try and push it too hard. Just go, yeah, let's just roll with it. Yeah, see where it takes us.
I love it, man. I connect with it because I did an exercise on myself at the beginning of last year, the beginning of last year. And that exercise was similar to what you're talking about. Where do I need to go? Who do I want to spend more time with? And I did this exercise when we're up in the north of Peru. Amazing place.
Beautiful.
It's crazy. It's so good. And then I came back to Sydney and it was the 5th of January. And I was in the gym. Not many people are training on the 5th of January, but I've been training all year because it was like, okay, I know where this year's going for me. And I reached out. I just saw this guy and we just started chatting. I said to him, what do you do? He said, I work in mental health. I bring it into different companies. And I was like, hey, so do I. Let's go for a coffee. And he's like, sweet. We had a little bit of a conversation. We got to hang out the next week, sat down, and he said, so I've looked at your details. I've seen that you're qualified. I've seen that your story, and I see you're not someone talking about affirmations. I see you've got a logic, and I see that you've got the potential to really help people and make an impact. This is who I am. This is what I think you should do. Talk to me for an hour. And I was just like, whoa. And, you know, this guy's company had PayPal at the time as a client. He was taking mental health solutions into PayPal. Great bloke, very, very intelligent, but gave me that time. And there's been several times, I haven't reached out to him in a while, but there were several times where I just didn't know where to go. So like kind of jumping back to this whole startup life that, or, you know, whatever we call it, we're both in pursuit of trying to build something amazing, right? In different areas. Cannabis, alcohol. It's quite interesting that we're having this kind of conversation because there's
some crossovers.
Yeah, there are, man. There are. But there's moments, and I'm at a moment now. I'm in a very moment right now where my next bit, I'm like, okay, what does that look like and how do I get there, sort of thing. Very lucky that I've got an amazing group of people around me at the moment to kind of take me up, which I think, and it's like that. I think they need to kind of pull me up. And like you've been, like what you've had in the investment you've made, people have been able to bring this out of you, man. Like it was inside of you, but it's been able to come out. And I guess from that, you've now got the experiences about, well, that then makes it look better for the people that are my clients and that are able to see me as well. So I just, I really see how I really see how beneficial you would be. And I love the way you've kind of been able to change the way you're presenting. And I think that comes from some very strategic decisions that you've made to get some key people around you.
Yeah, that's right. What's the saying?
Serious.
It's not your net worth, it's your network. Oh, your network is your net worth or something like that. But that's so true. And I think me and you are waiting for that motherfucker to cash in. So we can keep building the dreams that we got, because we're always going to have these things that are beyond our means, and we'll somehow get there. But it's just like, hopefully it gets easier. But maybe it won't, and that's part of the fucking awesomeness.
Yeah, maybe. We don't know. That's the thing, right? I can't remember who says it, but it is, if you are not living on the edge of a cliff where you could drop off at any second, you're not doing anything sort of interesting. Now, that's not going to connect with a whole lot of people, but it's kind of like I'm pushing. And literally it's like, hello. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's fucking there, man. It's there.
Yeah, it really is.
I know one of the populations that you work with, you said before, were entrepreneurs, so people in the startup world. And I think that's amazing, because my experiences of the startup world are very still much fueled by booze, late nights, poor food, don't sleep, all these sort of things, which we know aren't the foundations of probably what it should be to get the most out of their performance and optimal performance. One of the questions I'm very curious about for you, do you have any non-negotiables in your day?
Yeah. So what I trained up with the Flow Genome project is peak performance. So peak performance is massive in the States. Like all the companies that are covering the way, the big ones, they're very clued into peak performance. And to go a little bit more gnarly, it's like, how do we access flow states where we show up our best, or we can drop in and get more out of ourselves? And there's so much to that. And my non-negotiables generally is I have to do some form of breath work during the day. I know we've spoken about breath work before, but my ideal day is literally an on-ramp to my most task. So I talk with my clients, I talk a lot about on-ramps and off-ramps, and how we building an on-ramp, like a macro on-ramp. So in the morning would be like getting up, drinking my water, doing my at least 15, 20 minute exercise, doing my basic breath work, because breath work sets you up for the day really well. And it's just continuous practice. I think breath work's the number one thing that has allowed me to progress, basically. I'm with you for sure. Breath work, and then I'll do sometimes meditate, and then I will find a frother. So try and have a conversation with someone. So have a really good conversation like this. Right? Yeah, breath work. I mean, like that, they kind of go hand in hand. So
100%.
Yeah, because I guess you are doing math work because I'm just counting. All I'm doing is sitting there counting and just chilling. And then sometimes I'll do a little bit of meditation at the end of it, which is just trying to like clear my mind a bit. And yeah, so then I'll try and do that. And that's kind of my little interesting to people is where I'll talk about intentional conversations. So like, what's the purpose of this conversation? And sometimes it's unintentional, intentional conversations. So there's no real point to the conversation. It's just to have a rad chat with a legend. And then after that, because when you walk a good conversation, we've had many, and you go, whoa, I feel fucking awesome. Especially in the podcaster space. In the podcaster space, people will have a radical conversation. We say, I don't know, if they speak to Tim Ferriss or something, this is an example. And then the do is they'll go, Facebook, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. This is what I just had this epic conversation with, da, 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 da. And whether they're doing it consciously or subconsciously, they're kind of looking for a feedback, like gratitude, not gratitude, some
gratification,
getting the likes and the comments. Gratification, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Rather, I'm trying to say to people is once you have that conversation, use that fucking juice and try and drop into a peak performance state and solve the biggest problem of your day or one of your biggest problems, whether it's business or home, whatever. Just give it a crack. And we're running a project with Macquarie University, and we'll be like creating a protocol around intentional conversations into problem solving, because I have a theory that we can potentially solve the problems of the world through intentional conversations into individual flow or group flow. And that's where the best shit comes from. That's where the geniuses of all time continuously have found the solutions. So
awesome, man.
So my non-negotiable is trying to have that conversation, or at least to listen to someone who inspires me at some point during the day in the lead up to trying to solve the biggest problem for me of that day.
Awesome, man. I love, I'm mindful of time, so we're going to be wrapping up soon. I'm mindful, and I love to ask this question, and I want to know where you're at, and you just share as much as you want. But you've mentioned within this conversation that there's someone that lives 10 minutes away from you, and they're 2 to 3 years ahead of you for where you want to be. I want to know in 24 months, what's Benny Wallington doing?
Yeah, I just did a 5-year plan, which is the first time I think I've ever done that. I may have done a bullshit one back in the days when I started writing business plans and stuff. 24 months. I've relocated to the Gold Coast with my partner, and I fucking love it. It's a bit of a gear shift from Sydney, but it's got all the same things that tick my boxes in terms of lifestyle. And there is actually a really powerful network up here of health professionals and tech professionals, etc. 24 months from now, I'm doing basically what Pete, the guy I'm talking about, is doing. Like he's created a business which is helping people, which is all about how do we train up the next wave of paramedics, because it's one of the most sought after jobs. So he's got this full training program where he trains up the paramedics before they go on to apply to do their accreditation. So it gives them a massive foot in the door. And so his is essentially online programming to help people step up, right? And so I'm very much in that space. I'd love to be creating epic online programming that helps people step up. And with booze is only one part of it, right? Booze essentially is kind of a blocker to peak performance. So allowing people to identify where are those blockers showing up in their lives, and then here's the journey to more flow showing up in your life. So I've got kind of a grand plan to create a program which is really around that, and I've already started formulating that. So that's kind of wheels are in motion, dropping some kind of beta program pretty soon.
Awesome, man. And I would say that alcohol would probably be the number one killer of productivity. Like, that's a big call, I know, but I think it's massive in terms of optimization and where you can be at. You throw alcohol into the mix, and then you start listening to where your thoughts are. You start listening to, what those thoughts are telling you about where you need to be and how much procrastination and things can fit into it. And on that point, anyone who feels that they may be in a situation where it stops for them from showing up the best they can be, how do they get in touch with you? What do they need to do? And what are some good starting points?
Yeah, starting points, definitely check out add me, that's where you hang out, and then you can just DM me, or add me on Facebook as well. I don't really mind. Kind of changed my perception on what Facebook is to me anyway. Hit the website, 101tokens.com. You can download the app for free. There's the links there. Otherwise, just search it on the app stores. You can download them there.
I'll put some stuff up as well.
And yeah, for sure. And yeah, reach out if you've got some questions. I've got a private Facebook group where people can say whatever they want in there. And it's, a few little rules around that. And there's over 1,000 people in that. It's pretty cool. So yeah, if you want a little, you're in there. Yeah. If any more information, just hit me up. If you're interested in private coaching, I'll schedule a call with you. Just reach out, and that's pretty simple. And like I said, I want to get people in who are really motivated and go-getters. Because interestingly, like you talk about networks and stuff, there's a guy who's potentially doing business development for me, and he went through and did a bit of 101 tokens for a bit. People who've been helping me with the business have in some way, shape or form been involved in how it's developed to where it is. So that's very much what I'm interested in as well.
Awesome, Benny. Man, I've enjoyed it, man. I'd love to do round 2 at some point. Maybe it's me coming on to Frothers, or maybe it's me getting you back here at a later stage, and we look at when we've got 3 to 4 sales coming through, we come back and we review and we make that journey together, man. Very grateful for your time.
Why don't we just do it quarterly?
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
We should just do it quarterly. Yeah,
cool.
It doesn't have to be we post it, podcast and all that stuff, but yeah, we can invite, like we said, we can invite our viewership to just listen to the chat.
Man, I love it. I absolutely love it. Massive key take homes, man. Very grateful. Thank you very much, brother. Love your work.
Cheers, legend.
See you, bro.